Every story has a moment where everything quietly shifts. Mine started on a Tuesday, with the same cracked sidewalk, the same Brooklyn wind, the same old coffee smell drifting from the corner bodega, and the same woman sitting on the same spot, Ruth. Every morning at 8:15, I walked past her to open my little bookstore. She sat cross-legged against the brick wall, layered in worn coats, her gray hair tucked under a faded knitted hat. Her hands were always folded gently over a paper cup, not shaken in anyone's face, not raised to plead, just resting there, like she was holding on to the last thin thread between her and the world. She never begged, never chased people, never told a story about how she ended up there. She just waited. Windshield. The first time I'd given her money, she'd looked at me with tired blue eyes and simply said, "Thank you, sir." And a tiny half-smile tugged at the edge of her lips. No drama, no tears. That quiet dignity. It got to me. 6 months passed that way. 6 months of me saying, "Morning, Ruth," dropping a few dollars in, and her giving me that tiny nod. Some mornings I'd chuckle softly to myself, muttering, "There you go again, Patrick, feeding your guilt," then letting out a low, tired, "ha ha ha," as I fumbled for my keys at the bookstore door. But deep down, it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like the last little piece of kindness I still remembered how to give. After the divorce, that tiny moment with Ruth sometimes felt like the only human connection I had left. Karen had taken the big house, the sleek car, and half the savings. She'd taken our son too, in a way that hurt worse than any lawyer's paper. What I got was the small house on Carroll Street, my bookstore, and silence. So, every morning, in that silence, I found myself looking forward to that one small interaction. "Morning, Ruth." Small smile, soft nod, crunch and crumpled bills in the cup. It wasn't much, but it felt like something. That Tuesday morning, though, the air felt different. The October wind had a little more bite. The sky looked uneasy, a strange, dull gray hanging over Brooklyn Heights. Even the regulars on the street walked faster, collars up, faces tense. As I approached Ruth's corner, I noticed she wasn't looking at the ground like she usually did. Her eyes were scanning the street, sharp and restless. Her hands weren't folded. They were trembling slightly on top of that paper cup. "Morning, Ruth," I said, trying to sound cheerful, even though a soft wave of worry rolled over me. I slipped a $10 bill into her cup, feeling kind of proud of myself for being generous that day. Then it happened. Her hand shot up and grabbed my wrist. The strength in her fingers startled me. My breath caught. My heart thudded once, hard, like it wanted to run before I could. She pulled my hand closer, her face lifting to meet mine. For the first time in 6 months, those pale blue eyes locked fully onto mine, and they were filled with something I'd never seen in her before: fear. Discharged. "Don't go home tonight," she whispered. My mouth went dry. "Huh?" I tried to laugh it off, a shaky little ha 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 slipping out. "Ruth, what?" Lightning. Her grip tightened. "Don't go home tonight. Promise me." Her voice shook, like it was fighting back tears that wouldn't fall. "Please, Patrick, promise me." Hearing my name come from her lips, it shook me. I'd told her my name months ago, but she'd never used it, until now. There was a weight in that moment, an invisible pressure building in my chest. I swallowed, my voice suddenly small. "Okay, I promise," I said. The second the words left my mouth, she let go. Her hands folded again on her lap like nothing had happened. Her eyes drifted down, as if she hadn't just slammed a crack right through the middle of my normal life. I stood there for a second, rubbing my wrist where her fingers had pressed. People brushed past on their way to work, annoyed that I was blocking the sidewalk. The city buzzed as usual, but something inside me had gone quiet. I unlocked the bookstore door with shaky hands. The familiar jingle of the little brass bell above the frame rang out like any other day, but it sounded distant. The smell of old paper and coffee usually calmed me, almost like a hug. That morning, though, the shelves felt like they were closing in. Thousands of stories all around me, and yet I felt completely lost inside my own. I went through the motions: lights, coffee maker, registers, straightening a stack of novels near the entrance. But my mind was still at that corner. "Don't go home tonight, Patrick." Her voice echoed in my head over and over, like a mantra I hadn't chosen. "Come on, man," I muttered to myself with a weak chuckle, forcing out another little ha 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 that sounded hollow. "You're seriously going to let an old woman freak you out? It's just stress, divorce brain, middle-age meltdown." Yeah, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd had a bad dream. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she was talking to someone else in her mind and happened to grab the nearest wrist. Still, something in her eyes. They didn't look like confusion. They looked like terror. Around 10 a.m., a customer approached the counter. A young woman in a navy coat, arms full of paperbacks. I rang up the order, my fingers moving on autopilot. The register beeped, the receipt printed. My brain wasn't there. Excuse me," she said sharply. "You gave me $3 back instead of 13. Flushed down at the money in her hand. Oh, I'm so sorry," I stammered, fumbling with the bills. My hands were trembling and the register drawer felt like a trap snapping open each time I pushed it. "Long night, I guess. Here you go." She snatched the right change, shook her head, muttered something about customer service, and marched out. The bell above the door chimed, a sharp little sound that stabbed through my already frayed nerves. I stared at the register, my vision blurring. What am I doing? Around lunchtime, I burned the coffee. Then I misshelved half a box of new arrivals. A regular named Mr. Jacobs came in for his favorite mystery author, and I couldn't even remember which shelf the guy was on. I just stood there, heart pounding, trying to think, while sweat gathered at the back of my neck. Tangled all the while in the back of my mind. "Don't go home tonight, promise me." By mid-afternoon, the store felt heavier. The light outside shifted, clouds rolled in. I could feel a headache tightening around my temples. Every time the door opened, I jumped a little, my chest tightening as if I was expecting something, or someone, to walk in with bad news. At around 5:30, I looked around my empty store. The silence pressed against my ears. "I can't do this," I whispered to myself. Pierced the sign to closed, locked the door, and just stood there staring out at the street. People rushed by with grocery bags, briefcases, backpacks. They all looked so sure of where they were going. I pulled out my phone and hesitated. My thumb hovered over my neighbor's contact. Then I hit call. "Hello?" Sharon's voice drifted through the speaker, warm and familiar. "Hey Sharon, it's Patrick," I said. My voice sounded shaky and I tried to clear my throat. "Listen, I'm going to be out of town tonight. Maybe tomorrow too. Last-minute business thing." "Oh," she said, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay? You sound a little off, honey." I let out a slow breath, almost a sigh that carried more weight than air. Yeah, it's been a weird day. Could you just keep an eye on the house for me? Make sure nothing looks odd." "Of course," she replied gently. "You know you can count on me. Call me if you need anything, all right?" "Thank you," I said, my throat tightening a little. I really Really appreciate it. When I hung up, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread, like I had just made a decision that my future self would either be grateful for or regret forever. I walked to the back room, pulled out an old sleeping bag, and spread it over the lumpy couch in my office. The springs creaked as I sat down. I looked around at the stacks of unshelved books, the half-filled coffee cup, the dusty plant in the window. "This is ridiculous," I muttered softly, trying to laugh in a way that didn't sound as nervous as I felt. "You're a grown man, Patrick, sleeping at your store because a homeless woman grabbed your wrist." But even as I teased myself, I lay down and pulled the sleeping bag to my chest, and I did not go home. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ruth's face, her fingers digging into my wrist, the way her voice cracked when she said my name. My mind kept replaying her words over and over, like some broken record I couldn't switch off. At some point, exhaustion finally dragged me under. The bookstore went quiet. The city outside dimmed into a distant hum. I drifted in and out of strange dreams, flashes of flames and broken windows and Ruth's paper cup tumbling across the sidewalk. Then my phone started ringing, swallowing, violent, jarring. It ripped through the silence like a siren. I jolted awake, heart pounding, lungs gulping at the air. It was so dark I could barely see my own hands. The screen glowed beside me. Unknown number. I swallowed hard and answered. "Hello? Admiration?" a male voice said, urgent and firm. "This is FDNY. There's been an explosion at your home on Carroll Street." I sat straight up. "What?" My voice cracked. "What did you say?" "There was a gas explosion, sir," he repeated. "A major one. The structure has been heavily damaged. We were told you might be inside. Are you at home?" I could feel my pulse in my ears. My chest felt tight, like an invisible hand was squeezing it. No," I stammered. I'm at my bookstore. Oh my God." The man on the line exhaled audibly. "Thank God. We'll need you to come down to the scene as soon as possible, Mr. Patterson." "Oh, okay, I'll be there." The phone, my hand shaking. My whole body felt like it was buzzing, like every nerve had been plugged into an electrical socket. My house just exploded. I stumbled into my clothes. My fingers fumbled with the buttons of my shirt. I put my shoes on the wrong feet at first. I let out a helpless, broken laugh at myself, then almost started weeping right there in the dark. "Get a grip, Patrick," I whispered. "Move." I called a cab, my voice shaky as I gave the address. The driver arrived in minutes and I climbed in, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. As we drove through Brooklyn's empty streets, the city lights smeared across the wet windows. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "You okay, sir?" he asked quietly. I swallowed hard. My house exploded," I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. He didn't say anything after that, just drove faster. When we turned onto Carroll Street, I saw the flashing lights first, red and blue painting the neighborhood in frantic colors. Fire trucks, police cars, an ambulance, a cluster of people standing behind a makeshift barrier. Then I saw what was left of my home, or rather, what wasn't. My legs almost gave out when I stepped out of the cab. There was nothing but broken wood, twisted metal, shattered glass. Smoke still rose from the wreckage in angry little streams. Firefighters moved carefully around the ruins, hoses still spraying stubborn embers. "Jesus," the cab driver whispered behind me. I took a few steps forward, my feet heavy, my throat thick with the taste of smoke and disbelief. A firefighter in a helmet approached me. "Mr. Patterson?" he asked. "Yes," I managed. "I'm Captain Rick Cooper," he said. His face was streaked with soot, his eyes serious. "I'm very sorry about your home. You're extremely lucky you weren't inside." "Lucky," I repeated numbly. My gaze stayed fixed on the ruins. The spot where my bedroom should have been, gone. The kitchen, gone. The living room where I used to sit and pretend the house wasn't so empty after Karen left, gone. "Do you live alone?" he asked. Yes," I replied. "Just me." He nodded. "We didn't find any bodies in the debris. We were afraid you'd been killed. The explosion started near the basement. We'll have investigators come in to confirm, but it looks suspicious." Suspicious. The word scraped against my brain like broken glass. Behind me, I heard my name. "Patrick!" I turned. Sharon was standing there in her bathrobe and slippers, hair wild, eyes red from crying. She rushed over and grabbed my arm. "Oh my God, Patrick, I thought you were dead," she sobbed. "When I heard the explosion, Oh, honey." She pulled me into a hug. Her body shook as she cried against my shoulder. I didn't even realize I was crying too until I felt tears rolling down my cheeks and disappearing into her robe. I wasn't home," I choked out. "I stayed at the store." She pulled back slightly, her wet eyes searching mine. "Why?" A barred, a shaky breath. "Someone told me not to go home." It sounded crazy even as I said it. I stayed at the scene until the sun started to rise, watching my house become nothing more than a memory. The firefighters worked with quiet determination, voices low, movements practiced. A few neighbors came over with sympathetic looks, soft voices, and pats on the shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Patrick. Thank God you weren't inside." Gas leaks. They're so unpredictable. Unpredictable. That word sat in my chest like a stone. Somehow this didn't feel random. It didn't feel like bad luck. It felt planned. Captain Cooper eventually approached me again. "Mr. Patterson, we'll have our fire marshals and investigators go through everything," he said. "But I'll be honest with you. Gas explosions like this can be accidental. They can also be engineered." My stomach twisted. "You're saying someone might have done this intentionally?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "We can't say for sure yet, but yes, it's possible. Is there anyone who might want to hurt you?" The question hit me like a punch. My mind immediately flashed to Karen, the divorce, the arguments, then to my son, Andrew. But I pushed the thought away so fast it made me dizzy. "No," I said quickly. I don't think so." He gave me a long, searching look. "If you remember anything at all, you call us, all right?" I nodded, though my thoughts were far away. By the time I left Carroll Street, my body felt heavy and empty at the same time. Every step felt like walking through wet cement. People went about their morning routines, joggers, dog walkers, early commuters. They had no idea a man down the street had almost died in his sleep, and that the only reason he was still walking among them was because a homeless woman told him not to go home. Ruth. Her name pulsed in my head like a beacon. I didn't think. I just walked. The path from Carroll Street to Montague felt longer than usual, every corner holding a memory of a life that didn't exist anymore. I turned the last corner and there she was. Same spot, same position, same paper cup. But now, I saw her differently. She lifted her head before I even reached her. Our eyes met. There was no surprise in her face, only relief. and a kind of quiet sadness that made my chest ache. "You listened," she said softly. I stopped in front of her, unable to speak at first. My throat tightened as emotion surged up, hot and painful. "My house," I managed, my voice breaking. It exploded. She nodded like she already knew. I don't understand," I said. "How? How did you know?" "Ruth?" Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached into the worn canvas bag beside her. She pulled out that old flip phone again, the kind I hadn't seen in years, and pressed a few buttons. Then she turned the screen toward me. The image was grainy, dark, and crooked, but I recognized the side of the house, the gas meter, the little basement door, and I recognized the person crouched beside it. My breath hitched. "That's," I whispered, my heart racing. No, it can't be." Thirsty was bent over, fiddling with what looked like tools or some kind of device attached to the pipes. The face was partially turned away, but the profile, the shoulders, the messy hair, I knew it. "Your son," Ruth said quietly. "He was there around 11 last night. I saw him from where I sleep across the street. I couldn't sleep. I noticed someone moving around your house. I thought maybe it was a burglar at first. Then I saw what he was doing." My knees went weak. I took a step back, my hand flying to my mouth. Tears burned my eyes. "No," I whispered. "No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't." Ruth's voice softened. I didn't know what he was doing exactly. I just knew it wasn't right. The way he kept looking around, the tools, the way he messed with your gas line. I took a picture, just in case. And this morning, I couldn't let you go home. I couldn't just sit there and say nothing. Patience, a sob caught in my throat and finally broke free. I turned my face away, wiping at my eyes angrily, ashamed to be crying in front of her. But I couldn't stop. "My own son," I whispered hoarsely. "My own son." Ruth's hand moved, slow and hesitant before resting lightly on my arm. The touch was gentle, human. "Nonetheless, I don't know why he did it," she said softly. "But I know this. You didn't deserve to die like that. No one does." In that moment, in the middle of a busy Brooklyn street, with cars passing and people hurrying by, a homeless woman held the only proof that someone I loved more than my own life had tried to end it. Walking into the police station with Ruth's old phone clutched in my hand felt like walking into a nightmare. The walls were too white. The lights were too bright. The officers behind the desk spoke in calm, professional tones that felt completely wrong for what I was about to say. My name is Patrick Patterson," I told the woman at the front desk, my voice trembling. "I need to speak to someone about an explosion at my house and my son." They sent us to a small waiting area. Ruth sat beside me, holding her bag close. She looked out of place among the plastic chairs and sterile walls, but she looked steady, stronger than I felt somehow. A detective in his 50s with salt and pepper hair eventually walked in, a folder under his arm. "Mr. Patterson, I'm Detective Joe Bennett," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, grounding. "I've been briefed about the fire at your residence. I'm very glad you're alive." "Glad," I repeated faintly. "That makes one of us." He gave a small, sympathetic smile and sat down across from us. "The captain at the scene mentioned you thought the explosion might not have been an accident. That's a serious thing to say." My fingers tightened around the phone. I have something you need to see," I whispered. I showed him the pictures. He leaned in, eyes narrowing as he examined them. The room felt so quiet, I swear I could hear my own heartbeat. "This was taken when?" he asked. "Last night," Ruth answered. "Around 11. I was across the street. I saw him messing with the gas line and took the picture. I didn't know who he was until this morning when I saw Patrick." "And you're sure this is your son, Mr. Patterson?" the detective asked gently. I swallowed hard. It felt like I was swallowing knives. "Yes," I whispered. "That's Andrew. I'd know him anywhere." "How old is he?" Bennett asked.
28.
"And has he had any issues recently? Financial trouble? Addiction?" He asked the questions softly, but each one was a punch. I took a deep, shaky breath. "Drugs," I finally admitted, my voice rough. "For a few years now, mostly pills at first, then worse. After the divorce, it just got out of control. I tried to help him. Rehab, money, tough love. Nothing stuck. We haven't really talked properly in months." Bennett nodded slowly, his expression darkening with understanding. "And you have a life insurance policy, correct?" My heart pounded faster. "How did you—" "The fire chief mentioned it," he said. "It's standard in these cases to ask. Is it a large policy?" $750,000, I said quietly, shame creeping into my voice as if I'd done something wrong by trying to protect my family's future. My ex-wife insisted when things were good, in case something happened to me. Bennett sat back, exhaling slowly. "We'll need your son's address," he said. "We're going to have to bring him in for questioning. Given this photo and the timing of the explosion, we can't treat this as anything less than attempted murder." The word murder hit me like a physical blow. My breath hitched. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop a sob from escaping, but one still slipped out, a low, broken sound that made Ruth's eyes soften with quiet sympathy. "This doesn't mean we're assuming the worst," Bennett added gently. "We'll investigate. We'll get the full story. I've seen families go through hell and come out the other side. But right now, we need to move fast. Whoever did this is dangerous." Foreclosure. My son. My baby boy who used to fall asleep on my chest when he was scared of thunderstorms. I gave them Andrew's address. I watched as Bennett stepped aside and made a call, voice calm but firm, requesting a team for a pickup. The whole time, my hands trembled so badly that Ruth quietly reached over and wrapped her fingers around mine. I didn't pull away. "We'll get answers," she murmured softly. "One way or another." I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. They arrested Andrew in his small apartment in Bed-Stuy. I wasn't there when they broke down the door, but Detective Bennett later told me how it went. No fight. No running, no shouting. He was just sitting on the edge of his bed, shaking. They found tools in his closet, residue on his clothes, and printed pages about gas ignition setups. That alone nearly made me collapse when I heard it. But nothing hit as hard as seeing him through the one-way glass later. He looked empty. The drugs had carved him out, left him a thin version of himself. His hair was messy, his eyes hollow, his shoulders slumped like he'd been carrying the weight of the world and finally dropped it. In the interrogation room, Bennett sat opposite him, calm and patient. The recording light blinked on. The tape began. "Andrew," the detective said, "your father is alive. He's not hurt." My son let out a shuddering breath and covered his face with his hands. I could see his shoulders shaking as he let out a broken, muffled sob. I thought he'd be dead by now," Andrew choked. "I thought, oh God, oh God." "Look at me, Andrew," Bennett said gently. "We have photos of you near the gas line before the explosion. We found equipment in your apartment. This is your chance to tell us why. Did someone make you do this?" Andrew looked up slowly, tears streaking down his face. His voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I am so sorry." "Why?" Bennett asked quietly. "Why did you do it?" Andrew swallowed hard. "I owed money," he said, shame twisting his features. "A lot of money, to bad people. I tried to pay them. I borrowed. I stole. It was never enough. They said they'd kill me if I didn't give them something big." "So you thought killing your father for his life insurance was the answer?" Bennett asked, his tone even but heavy. Andrew let out a strangled sound, half sob, half bitter laugh. "It sounds horrible when you say it like that." "That's because it is horrible," Bennett replied softly. "But I need you to say it, in your own words." My son stared down at his cuffed hands. "Dad had that policy," he whispered. 750 grand. I knew about it. Mom always talked about it when I was younger. Said he loved that policy more than he loved her. Those words stabbed me in a place I didn't know still existed. "I went to see him a couple weeks ago," Andrew continued. "I asked if he still had it. He said yes. I thought, if he died in an accident, the money would save me. It would save everyone. It would fix everything." Bennett leaned forward slightly. "Who gave you the idea?" he asked quietly. "That killing your father was an option?" Andrew looked up, eyes glassy with guilt and something else, fear. Whispered. "She did," he whispered. "Say her name." Andrew closed his eyes and a tear slid down his cheek. "My mom," he breathed. "Karen." Standing behind that glass, hearing my son speak those words, it broke something deep inside me. I pressed my palm flat against the cold surface, as if I could somehow reach him, hold him, tell him this wasn't the end of our story. He was crying openly now, his voice cracking with each sentence. "I never wanted to hurt him," he sobbed. "I swear, I was desperate. And she made it sound like he deserved it, like he ruined our lives, like this was justice, not murder." Bennett glanced toward the glass for a brief second, as if acknowledging that I was listening. Then he turned back to Andrew. "This is important, Andrew," he said, "because if she planned this, if she manipulated you into doing it, she doesn't just share the blame. She may carry most of it." Andrew sniffed, wiped his nose on his sleeve like he was 6 years old again. "She visited me all the time after the divorce," he whispered. "She kept talking about how Dad took everything from her, how he kept his precious bookstore and his little life and left her with nothing. She said he was selfish, cold, that he ruined her reputation. She said he didn't deserve to walk away happy." His voice dropped, full of haunted regret. "She said an accident would be fair." The weeks after Andrew's arrest blurred together. Insurance calls, temporary housing in a small apartment above a deli, meetings with investigators, sleep that came in short, restless bursts. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son crouched by the gas line. I heard my ex-wife's voice in the background of my memories, complaining, accusing, twisting. I avoided looking at old photos for a while. It hurt too much. My life before the explosion felt like a different universe. But the one thing I couldn't avoid was Andrew. I didn't see him immediately. It took time before I had enough courage to face him. Rikers, the sky was gray, the air heavy. The building looked like something out of a nightmare. High fences, razor wire, concrete walls that seemed to swallow light. A guard named Adams walked me through the maze of corridors. He was stocky, with kind eyes and a voice that tried to be neutral but came out gently concerned. "Your son's been asking if you'd come," he said quietly. "Pretty much every day." That alone made my throat tighten. We entered the visiting room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, rows of plastic chairs, glass partitions. I sat down at one of the booths and picked up the old black phone that rested there. My palms were sweating so much I could barely hold on to it. When they brought Andrew in, my heart nearly stopped. He looked thinner. The drugs were leaving his body, and with them went the false bravado, the numbness, the lies he told himself. What remained was a young man who looked like a boy again, scared, broken, raw. He sat down on the other side of the glass and picked up his phone. For a moment, we just stared at each other, eyes locked, both of us unable to talk. Then he whispered, "Dad." The sound of his voice cracked something open. Tears filled my eyes instantly. "Hey, kid," I said, my voice shaking. "Been a while." He laughed weakly, a sound tangled with guilt. "Yeah, not exactly where I pictured we'd catch up." We both tried to smile. It hurt. "I'm sorry," he blurted out suddenly, his words tumbling over each other. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to ask for forgiveness. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me. I was scared, Dad. I was stupid. And she..." He stopped himself. His eyes darted around, paranoid, like his mother would appear out of the air. "Andrew," I said softly, pressing my hand against the glass. "Look at me." He did. His eyes were red, shining with unshed tears. "Tell me about Mom," I said. "Tell me everything she said. I need to know. All of it." His lip quivered. He swallowed hard. "She came to see me a lot after the divorce," he began slowly. "At first I thought she just missed me, needed me, wanted to reconnect." He let out a soft, bitter little laugh. "She knew I was using. She knew I was a mess. She never really told me to stop. She just kept talking about you." "What did she say?" I asked quietly. His eyes filled again. "That you threw her away like trash," he whispered. "That you chose the bookstore over your family. That you loved your shelves more than you loved us. That you cut her off, left her with nothing, humiliated her." "That's not true," I said, the words coming out reflexively. "I know," he said quickly. "I know that now. But when you're high, when you're desperate, when you feel like a victim, you cling to any story that makes your pain somebody else's fault. And she was very good at telling stories." I closed my eyes, memories swirling, arguments with Karen about money, about my working hours, about priorities, about my dreams for the store. Her words had always been sharp, but I never imagined they could turn lethal. "She told me you deserved to suffer," Andrew continued, voice trembling. "That you stole her best years and gave nothing back. That you didn't love us. That if something happened to you, it'd be karma." My chest ached. My breathing grew shallow. I felt like I was suddenly seeing my past from the outside. All my attempts to keep peace. All the times I'd backed down just to avoid another argument. All the times I'd comforted myself with the thought that at least our son knew I loved him. "She told me," Andrew said, voice barely audible now, "if you died accidentally, no one would question it. And at least then you could finally do something useful for the family. That insurance policy. She called it your final apology." A single tear slid down my cheek. I didn't wipe it. I let him see it. "I'm so sorry, Dad," he whispered, breaking into quiet sobs. "I let her poison me. I let the drugs and the anger and the fear drive me to do something unforgivable. You were always there. You helped me with school. You came to my games. You read me stories at night when Mom was out. And this is how I repaid you. Flush. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break the glass. I wanted to hold him and shake him and tell him he was wrong and right all at once. Instead, I pressed my hand harder against the glass, as if I could somehow send warmth through it. I'm not dead, I said softly. I'm here. You're here. That means we still have something to work with. Do you understand? He looked at me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You don't hate me, he whispered. A broken, wet laugh escaped me. Oh, believe me, I said, emotion swelling in my chest. There were moments I wanted to, but hating you won't fix anything. Hating you won't bring the house back. It won't rewrite what happened. It won't drag your mother out of whatever darkness she's living in. He wiped his eyes, sniffing hard. I do, however, I continued, want the people who used you, who twisted you, to face what they really are. And that includes your mother, whether I like it or not. He nodded slowly, his gaze sharpening a little with determination. Will you help? I asked. Will you tell the truth even if it hurts her? He took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, he whispered. I owe you that much. I owe myself that much too. Detective Bennett listened carefully to everything Andrew told him. Every visit, every word, every manipulation. It was like watching someone slowly piece together a puzzle you didn't know was even on the table. Disregate. This up long before the gas line, Bennett said eventually. Your ex-wife laid the emotional groundwork years ago, Mr. Patterson. I nodded slowly. Part of me still didn't want to believe it. Another part of me, if I was honest, recognized the pattern. Karen had always been good with words, too good. She knew how to twist any disagreement into a grand betrayal, how to turn any argument into proof that she was the wounded party. Now, it seemed she'd simply taken that skill and aimed it straight at my life. Bennett proposed a plan. We'll record her, he said. We'll use Andrew. She trusts him. She thinks she can still control him. We'll let her talk. People like her always talk. I watched nervously from behind the one-way mirror as the plan unfolded. Andrew sat in the prison visiting room, looking nervous and fragile but resolute. The guard led Karen in. My breath caught when I saw her. She looked almost the same and yet completely different. Thinner, colder, more polished in some ways, like she was trying even harder to prove she was winning. Her hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail. Her clothes were expensive but sharp, like armor. She sat down opposite Andrew, picked up the phone, and didn't even bother with a greeting. You idiot, she hissed, her face tight with anger. What did you tell them? My stomach clenched. There was no concern in her voice, no worry, just fury that her plan had failed. I had to say something, Andrew replied shakily, playing his part. They had evidence, Mom, photos, tools. They knew. I told you to shut up, she snapped. You had one simple job. Keep quiet. Let the investigation blame the gas company. Your father dies. We get the money. Instead, you crumble the second they look at you sideways. My hands curled into fists at my sides. It felt like the floor was tilting. You said he deserved it, Andrew said quietly. He did, she shot back, slapping her hand against the glass, making me jump even from behind the mirror. After everything he did to me, to us, you think I spent 15 years of my life supporting his little bookstore fantasy just to end up with nothing? He walked away with his name intact, his reputation, his precious shelves, while people whispered about my affair. She spat the word out like poison. You had an affair, Mom, Andrew said, sounding genuinely pained. She waved a dismissive hand. Details. Maybe I made mistakes, but so did he. He never treated me the way I deserved. He never appreciated me. He never gave me the life I should have had. So yes, I wanted him to pay. So you asked your son to kill him? Bennett's voice echoed in my head, even though he said nothing aloud in that moment. I didn't ask you to kill him, Andrew, she insisted, leaning closer to the glass. I gave you an opportunity, an arrangement, a solution to both our problems. You needed money. I needed justice. The insurance policy was sitting there, mocking me. If he died in an accident, the world would call it tragedy. I would call it balance. Andrew's voice trembled. What about me? What about what this would do to me? She scoffed. You're a grown man. You made your choices. You think I forced those pills down your throat. You were already drowning when I found you. I just offered you a way to swim to the surface with a few $100,000 in your pocket. You should be thanking me. Barred, I felt sick. I almost killed my father, Andrew whispered, tears gathering in his eyes. And you're standing there telling me I should thank you? Emotion makes you weak, Karen snapped. This is what happens when men like you and your father start crying about feelings. You both disgust me sometimes. I did what needed to be done. She leaned in closer, her eyes hard. If you had done what I told you, if that homeless woman hadn't seen you, none of this would have blown up. Literally. The door to the visiting room swung open with a loud metallic sound. Detective Bennett walked in, followed by two uniformed officers. Karen Johnson, he said, his voice steady but edged with steel. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and solicitation to commit murder. She froze, her face draining of color. What? She demanded. You can't. This is insane. This is just a family misunderstanding. Bennett gestured toward the cameras. You just confessed on tape, he said, in detail. This is far beyond a misunderstanding. As the officers moved toward her, she twisted, eyes blazing, and for a second our gazes met through the glass of the one-way mirror, not because she could see me, but because I could suddenly see exactly who she really was. Not the woman I'd married, not the girl I'd once loved, but someone who had chosen bitter revenge over any remaining shred of humanity. She started screaming as they cuffed her. Insults, accusations, denials. Her voice was shrill, echoing off the concrete walls. I closed my eyes and let a slow breath out, a long, trembling sigh that carried years of pain with it. It was over. At least, that part of it was. Subjected after the trial, the world looked different. Karen was sentenced to 15 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, with no possibility of parole for the first 7. She never showed real remorse. Even at sentencing, she stood there and called herself the victim. The judge didn't buy it. Neither did the jury. Andrew pled guilty. He took responsibility. He entered a rehabilitation and recovery program as part of his sentence. It wasn't easy. There were withdrawals, dark nights, moments where he wanted to give up. But slowly, painfully, he started to climb. We wrote letters. At first they were stiff, awkward, full of half-finished apologies and clumsy attempts at conversation. Over time they began to soften. He told me about his counseling sessions. I told him about the new bookstore. Because yes, there was a new bookstore. Not as big as the original, but beautiful in its own way. I used the insurance money from the house, not the life insurance policy that would have been my death note, but the policy meant for property, to open a new store in a smaller space in Park Slope. Bright windows, cozy chairs, warm lighting that made the books glow. A little coffee corner where locals lingered longer than they meant to. And Ruth? She wasn't sitting on the cold sidewalk anymore. She was carefully shelving books in the mystery section. Her hair was clean, trimmed, softly curled around her cheeks. She wore simple clothes, a cardigan, comfortable pants, sensible shoes. There was a light in her eyes now that I hadn't seen before, a softness, a quiet pride. I'd helped her find a small apartment nearby. Then, with some hesitation, I asked if she wanted a part-time job at the store. Flooring. She'd laughed nervously, a shaky little ha ha ha, like she thought I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, her eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" she'd whispered. It's been a long time since anyone trusted me with something like that." "Ruth," I'd said, smiling, "you saved my life. I trust you more than most people I know." Now, as I watched her line up Agatha Christie novels in perfect order, humming under her breath, my heart swelled with something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. I leaned against one of the shelves, sipping coffee, letting the afternoon sunlight soak into my bones. A small bell rang as a customer left, and the store settled into a peaceful quiet. I turned toward Ruth. "You know," I said, "you're really good at this." She smirked slightly, not looking up. "I told you. I used to be a librarian a long time ago." I blinked. "You never told me that." "You never asked," she replied softly, a touch of playfulness in her tone. "Life took me in some bad directions after that. One bad choice, one tragedy, another. Before I knew it, I'd fallen through every crack there was." She slid the last book into place and finally turned to face me. "You giving me those dollars every morning," she said quietly. "It reminded me. I was still seen, even when I thought I was invisible." My throat tightened. "You saved my life," I whispered. "I gave you a few dollars. That doesn't even compare." She shook her head. "Kindness doesn't get measured that way," she said. "You did what you could, when you could. I did what I could, when I could. That's how this whole messy world is supposed to work." I smiled, blinking away the moisture stinging my eyes. "You hear from Andrew today?" she asked, changing the subject gently. I nodded, pulling a folded letter from my pocket. "Yeah, he's 90 days clean now, working in the carpentry program. Says he's building shelves and tables. Wants to build something for the store when he gets out. Says it's his way of trying to put back what he tried to take away." Ruth's face softened with pride. Quietly. "A broken boy, but a good one, underneath it all." "Yeah," I whispered, "he is." Looking back now, it still amazes me how everything turned on such a small hinge. A few dollars. A quiet nod. A trembling hand grabbing my wrist. A whispered plea. "Don't go home tonight." If I had brushed her off, if I had laughed just a little louder, if I had chosen pride over that strange, nagging feeling in my gut, I wouldn't be here telling you this. Andrew would be living with the weight of my death on his shoulders. Karen would be spending my blood money. Ruth would probably still be on that corner, invisible again. Instead, my son is fighting his way back toward the light. My ex-wife is facing the consequences of her choices. Ruth has a home, a job, and the dignity she always deserved. And I have a life rebuilt not on illusions, but on truth and grace. People think big miracles come with flashing lights and booming voices. Mine came in a cracked coffee cup and a hoarse whisper. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I will never forget standing in front of the ruins of my house. I will never forget seeing my son in that grainy photo. I will never forget hearing him say he thought my death would solve everything. But forgiveness means choosing not to let those moments become the final chapter. It means choosing to say, Yes, this hurt me. Clang. Yes, this broke me. But no, this will not be the end of my story. Ruth taught me that the people the world overlooks often carry the greatest wisdom, the deepest courage, the purest compassion. She had nothing, no house, no savings, no status, and yet she gave me everything. She gave me my life. So now, every time a stranger walks into the store with that tired, haunted look, I try to see them, really see them, not as a problem, not as a burden, but as a story still being written. Sometimes I offer them a discount. Sometimes I offer them a chair and a cup of coffee. Sometimes I just offer them a smile and a gentle, "How luff?" She found out. Sometimes I offer them a new look with my world in my area. Sometimes I just offer them a chair and a gentle coffee. Sometimes I offer them a new look with my page. She did. Sometimes I offer them a coffee. Not, she find. Sometimes I offer them a way that my store in the chair. Sometimes I thanks in a gentle, "How are you really doing?" Perplex. Because you never know when that small kindness is the thread that keeps them from falling apart completely. I've also learned that love is messy, imperfect, sometimes twisted. But real love, the kind that rebuilds instead of destroys, it always leaves room for second chances. Every letter I get from Andrew is another brick in that rebuilding. "Dad," he wrote recently, "I used to think you were weak because you didn't fight Mom the way she fought you. Now I see you were just tired of the war. I'm sorry I joined her army instead of standing with you." I read that line over and over, tears dripping onto the page. I wrote back, "Son, we can't change what we did yesterday, but we can decide who we want to be tomorrow. Let's build that person together." Sometimes on quieter evenings after we close the store, Ruth and I sit by the front window and watch people walk past. The city lights bounce off wet pavement. The world keeps moving. "You ever wonder," I asked her once, "what stories are hiding behind all these faces?" "All the time," she said with a soft chuckle. "That man there with the briefcase? Maybe he just got fired and hasn't told his family yet. That woman with the grocery bags? Maybe she's visiting her sick mother and trying to pretend she isn't scared. That teenager with the headphones? Maybe he feels like nobody listens to him at home, so he drowns it all out with music." "Funny," I murmured, "how we walk by each other every day with whole wars going on inside and no one knows." She glanced at me sideways. "You walked by me for months without knowing my war." I lowered my head. "I'm sorry," I said softly, "for not asking sooner, for not seeing more." She shook her head. "You saw enough," she replied. "Enough to stop, enough to give, enough to care just a little. That's more than most." Silence settled between us for a moment, comfortable and full. "You gonna tell your grandkids this story someday?" she asked suddenly, a mischievous glint in her eye. I laughed, a warmer, truer laugh this time. "I'll be lucky if Andrew lets me hold his kids after all this," I said. "But if I do get that chance, yeah, I'll tell them. I'll tell them their father almost made the worst mistake a son can make and then chose a better road. I'll tell them their grandfather was saved by a woman everyone else walked past." "And what will you tell them about me?" she asked quietly. I turned to look at her, really look at her, the lines on her face etched with years of hardship, yes, but also with resilience. "I'll tell them you were the angel on the corner," I said softly. "The one nobody recognized until it was almost too late." She smiled then, and for a moment I swear she looked 10 years younger. So here I am, sharing this with you. Not because I enjoy reliving my pain, Not because I want pity, but because I believe stories can save people before they reach the edge I almost fell off. If you're listening to this right now, from your room, your car, your break at work, maybe late at night when the world feels too heavy, hear this. Your kindness matters. Your choices matter. Your forgiveness matters. Your life matters. Maybe you're the Ruth in someone's story, the one who sees what others don't, who speaks up when no one else will. Maybe you're the Andrew, the one who made terrible choices but still has a chance to turn around. Maybe you're me, the one caught in the middle, trying to make sense of betrayal and still find a way to love. Wherever you are in that story, it doesn't have to end in flames. If this story reached into your chest and touched something there, I want you to do something. Think of a time when a stranger's kindness changed your path, even a little. Or think of a moment when you could have walked away, but didn't. Or maybe, think of someone you need to forgive, not for them, for you. And then, if you feel like it, share it. Because the world is starved for stories that remind us we're still capable of goodness, that even after manipulation, hatred, greed, and shattered trust, love can still rise from the ashes, shaky but real. My life should have ended in a quiet house on Carroll Street, swallowed by fire. Instead, it was reborn in a bookstore in Park Slope, with the sound of pages turning and the steady footsteps of a woman who once had nothing and now has a place. All because of one small act of kindness. So let me ask you, where are you listening from right now? And do you believe that a single, simple act of kindness could one day save a life? Maybe even your own?